Victoria. And as you can see, we're in a good deal, 2/3 of the municipalities. In our earlier life, when the police were running it many years ago, most municipalities had a Neighbourhood Watch group. There was a bit of a friction when we broke away, if you like, in 2010. So a few groups called it quits at that time. And now I'm also the Secretary of Neighbourhood Watch Victoria. We're trying to rebuild and get Neighbourhood Watch throughout the state. And of course, the big change over the life of Neighbourhood Watch that I've been involved in is that now we've got social media to make connections, where the most sophisticated things we had when we first started was a telephone tree where I rang 4 people rang 4 people, and on it went down the chain. We can do that all in one quick email or Facebook post or whatever. So that's where we are now. So why do you have Neighbourhood Watch? Well, I guess the critical thing as shown on the slide is that there's a finite number of police, and they can't be everywhere, but there's now well over 4 million adults in Victoria, and we are everywhere. So we've got to keep our eyes and ears open and report things that don't look right. It is interesting, if you take even that 16,000 police, that sounds like a heck of a lot, but then you start to think about 3 shifts a day, and because of shift work they have 9 weeks annual leave and not 4, etc., and all of a sudden that's 16,000, and there's people on leave and people at courses and training and whatever. All of a sudden that 16,000 doesn't look so big when you divide by 3 and take away the number you first thought of. So what are the principles of Neighbourhood Watch? They're not really rocket science, and quite candidly, if everybody did what's on this screen, we could shut up shop and stay home at night type things. But really the primary thing is that you look after your own stuff, if you like. Because if you secure your house, your car and any other belongings, that's already making it hard for the crooks to steal things. The other thing that I'll talk about it shortly, we're emphasising now, and it's really been coming out during the COVID-19 period, is sort of looking out for each other. And so what we're advocating is that, getting to know your neighbour and just keeping a bit of a lookout. Don't be intrusive, but just keep an eye on their property, particularly when they're away, or just keep an eye on them. And then the last thing, which is quite interesting in itself, about ringing the police if you see something suspicious. And our point is that looking at and not being unkind with the images of the group tonight, where of the middle-aged, or most of us middle-aged to senior age groups, and where many of us have been in the same house for 30 or 40 years. So we're pretty sure what cars are parked in our street and what people are wandering around. So we're the ones who can best tell if there's something that's not right. And we, of course, urge people to ring 000 as soon as they see something untoward. Our job, particularly, allowing that we leave the police to do the detection and the apprehension and ultimately the help with the prosecution of the crooks, we're trying to educate the public on ways of keeping safe and reducing the chances of them becoming a victim of crime. So hence the earlier slides about some of the things you can do to keep safe. And what are the main types of crime? The unfortunate thing is that when I started 35 years ago, residential burglary was a major concern, And in fact, that was the catalyst, I think, for starting Neighbourhood Watch in Victoria and probably anywhere in Australia, was in those days as the standard of living went up, people started to get themselves higher standard electrical goods, and people insisted in coming through your window and nicking your TV set and a few other things. I guess today one of the benefits, with large inverted commas, of having these gigantic widescreen TVs is they're bolted to the wall because it's the only place they can sit in the house, and so they're a bit harder for people to nick. The other crime type that is still quite prevalent in Manningham is theft from motor vehicles. We've been banging on for 30 years plus about not leaving valuables visible in your car, and people still leave valuables visible in the car, and then they're surprised when somebody breaks a window and nicks the laptop they left on the back seat, or the mobile phone or the handbag or whatever. So that's residential burglary and theft from motor vehicles are the two major crime types. Theft of motor vehicles comes up a bit, but in Manningham it's not too bad. The numbers of vehicles being stolen is relatively small because, of course, the security systems on cars are getting a bit better. You can still smash a window and nick a laptop off the back seat. You can't necessarily drive the car away. One of the things we do is try and keep the community informed, and we do it two ways, well, three ways, I guess, because there's also a Facebook page. But we have a paper newsletter, which is the one on the left, and a e-news on the right. The paper newsletter comes out every 2 months and goes to over 28,000 homes in Manningham, which is about 2/3 of the population, and the e-news comes out monthly. And I'll just draw your attention, because I'll mention it a bit further on another slide. Our partners, we have some local organisations that are helping us particularly produce the newsletter. Historically, we got it produced by the council, which was very good of them, but when they closed their print room, we had to arrange for the printing and pay for it ourselves. And so we have partners now, and Brian and I have been talking a bit about that, who help us with funding the cost of the newsletters. I would also acknowledge Hudson Bond, which you can see at the bottom of our newsletter there. They, for 7 or 8 years, have been the sponsor who supply our newsletter paper, and we worked out about a bit over 200,000 sheets they supply, which keep us going for about 15 to 18 months. Quick illustrations of some of the activities we're involved in. We talked about educating the public, and so when there's farmers markets and community events, we turn up and speak to members of the public. And although just there, our police crime prevention officer, when she's with us, it's interesting, we get a lot more interest from the public. People seem reluctant to go to the police station to ask a question, but if we bring the police to them, they buttonhole the police members and get the questions off their chest. One of the other activities we do is we have a letterboxing team that goes around every month, not during COVID, and we drop off brochures in so-called crime hotspots, which are identified by the police. In the inset there on that slide, you'll see, and I'm not sure if you're aware of the so-called Z-fold process of producing a brochure, but that brochure, if you visualise it being flattened out, the bottom flap with the, if you see the chance, the car, reference to car theft and so on, that will be on the back. So it's a double-sided brochure that when you fold it down to the DL size, it has 2 front pages. And so, and seeing there the 2 major crime types, that neatly gets over the problem of dropping off something about residential burglary or theft from motor vehicles. We do it all in one hit. Another big activity, and I don't know, and we won't do a straw poll tonight, but we very much encourage you to get one-way theft-resistant screws fitted to your car number plates. The car number plates are stolen and then used for other crimes, and it's just a pain in the backside. Brian and I can talk to you about the frustrations at times of dealing with Vic roads and getting your number plate replaced and so on. And in the inset there, you'll see that the left screw is just a Phillips head screw, so it can wind either way with a standard screwdriver. The screw on the right is the one we install, which is has a head which is a funny shape, and if you visualise putting a screwdriver, a flat blade screwdriver, you can turn it clockwise, but it's very difficult to turn it anti-clockwise, so that's how you get the security. If a crook wants to steal your number plates badly enough, they'll get the screws undone, but most crooks are in a hurry, and so if you've got those on your number plates, that hopefully keeps them on your car. We every 6 months we are down at the Park and Ride, and we fit the one-way screws to number plates. Very quickly, two programs, bigger programs we're involved in at the moment. I alluded a little bit earlier to this, Know Your Neighbour, where we've got this is the inside of the brochure, there's one more point on the back. We're sort of trying to get people to start to get back to a bit of a community connection and get to know their neighbours. Sometimes there's language difficulties, and there's just you know, unease about knocking on next doors and so on. So I won't go through it in detail, but you'll see, give the neighbour a wave. That normally doesn't hurt. You can do it in any language, even saying hi. You know, even if your English isn't your first language, and somebody says something in Cantonese or whatever, if it's said with a smile, you know what they're saying, and you can say hi back, and on you go through a series of steps. And we're just trying to work our way through and get people to actually get chatting with their neighbour, and hence looking out for each other. As I say, the COVID-19 publicity has been fairly supportive of our approach, and there's constantly in the media articles about groups getting to know each other and doing things together, etc. So whilst we didn't purposely bring on the COVID-19 just to match our program, the publicity behind it has been supportive of that. The other one, which is quite interesting, is we're starting to talk to the people in high-rise buildings about safety in those buildings. You would suggest that if you're on the 5th floor of a building, you know, near shopping town, the chances of someone coming in through your window is fairly small to steal your stuff, and that's fair enough. But there's quite a problem with parties in some of these buildings. There's problem, and you know, people getting drunk and drugs and goodness knows what. A lot of the ones with short-term stays are a problem. And there's also problems with people following cars into the underground car parks and getting into the cages and stealing stuff from there. So we're working with the police on that, and we've got a couple of buildings in the program, but of course hampered at the moment because of restrictions. A quick image of what we're not. We're often accused of being curtain twitchers and sticky beaks and a few other things, but I think you can have a healthy interest in your neighbours rather than an intrusive interest in them. Who are the organisations we work with? Obviously the police. Department of Justice is a key player in this space. Crime Stoppers, they're sort of working a bit the same, although often they come into the situation after the damage is done, whereas our education, we're trying to stop that sort of thing. There's the Crime Statistics Agency now that gives us unbiased crime stats to get over problems that we had at some stage with police statistics. And iWatch is the Facebook version of for the local police in the various municipalities. we're just about there, and the question inevitably has to be asked, and I'm sure it happens in Rotary as well. You know, is it all worthwhile? Is the effort worthwhile? This is a graph of the crime rate, so that's standardised against population, 100,000 population, so it allows for different numbers of people living in Manningham over the years, and that's from when we started. Well, that's at 86, a year after we started, and through to the middle of last year, and that's the crime rate. And as you can see, it's come down about close to 50% from when we started. We never lay claim to being the sole drivers of that reduction in crime, because there's been changes to legislation, the way policing's occurred and so on, but I think we've contributed to it, and that's the best we can say. People often ask, what was the big blip between 2013 and 2018, where things obviously seem to, or up to 2017 and then start to come down again. You know, it seemed that we'd lost the plot. I've been advised that round about 2013 was the time where the authorities started to take domestic violence a lot more seriously. So the victims of domestic violence started to report, because they knew it wasn't a waste of time, because up until then there'd been real concerns that the authorities weren't taking them seriously. So that gave that a bit of a spike. That's one of the reasons it's been explained to me. So, but anyhow, the start and finish is the important of the points on that graph, that we certainly are making progress in the right direction. How Rotary could help Neighbourhood Watch. First of all, you're more than welcome to join our group and volunteer and help with us, but I can quite understand you do a heck of a lot for the community in your own organisation, so that's understandable that you'll sort of do that, and we'll do this. Although, by the way, I would make the point that if there's opportunities where you think we can join forces in any programs or so on, please give me a yell, and we'll certainly happy to work along. We work with the Lions on a few things, SES on a few things, and so on. Another way you can help, and as I say, that Brian and I had a brief discussion about it, is become a partner, as I illustrated on our publications a bit earlier, or even if you can't stretch to doing that, giving us some help in printing those brochures, those double-sided brochures for letterboxing program each month, even that would be a help. So I think, unless I'm mistaken, that brings us to the end. And so I should be able to reappear, I think, if I do that. Yes, I did. So I don't know how you want to handle questions or how you want to do it.
Excellent, Geoff, thanks very much. That's really given us a great background on Neighbourhood Watch. Yes, as you mentioned, we've had a chat, and I've had a chat with the Rotary Club of Doncaster, and we're looking at the 4 clubs in the cluster. In fact, looking at a sponsorship deal with Neighbourhood Watch. So hopefully we can get the other 2, Doncaster and ourselves, have said tick. We just need the other 2 clubs to come on board, and then we can come back to you. So
yeah, no, that'd be great. And I appreciate that. And of course, as I said before, I appreciate that you folk are doing other good works in the community, and so you know, you've got put a fair bit of attention on that, but anything you can do to help us is great. And as I said, if there's opportunities for us to work with you people on even your programs, by all means let us know, because you know, we pooling our efforts probably get a better result. And just as a quick example, and I realise it'd be fairly difficult for me to hand one-way screws for your number plates through my screen. They might go into the, you know, DVD drive down here, but whether they'll come out the other end, I can't guarantee. But if there's an opportunity at some stage where a group of you are in the one place, I'm more than happy to bring a couple of my colleagues and we can fit all your number plates with one-way screws then and there. That's why we do it. Just very quickly, rather than give people screws, because there's 4 different sizes, only the car industry could do this to you. There's 4 different sizes that if we give you screws, we've got to give you 16 and you use 4 and throw 12 away. Also, of course, you don't use 4. What you do is you put them in the garage, and one day when I get a moment, I'll put the screws in the number plates. And we have found that screws sitting in the shelf in the garage do not stop getting your number plates stolen. They have to actually be fitted to the plates.
Yeah, Geoff, thanks for that. And indeed, RACV, back when I was there, we actually ran a program on the same thing, on actually having fitment days for one-way screws. So yeah, great initiative, and certainly endorse it. So questions, please, for Geoff. A lot of information there. So Ken and then Graham Kane. And unmute yourself.
Yeah. Geoff, back in the old days when I joined Neighbourhood Watch, it was ostensibly set around close to schools and stalking of kids, and kids being, well, the potential for kids being taken by, by predators. And I noticed that's not anywhere in your activities any longer, particularly.
Well, it is. The reason it's not in our activities is because it never was. You're thinking of the Safety House program.
Oh, my apologies then.
Yes,
okay.
but the safety, but interestingly, at one stage, because the Safety House program was struggling, the government asked whether we would sort of merge. And our biggest concern, and this is why the Safety House program foundered a bit, is that it was hard with 2 people in the house working. It was hard to actually find safe houses. And so, and even in recent times, we've had a few operators of commercial premises say, well, because you can't use homes for safety houses, what about if we make our business a sort of a safety place? And so if a child was concerned, they go to the milk bar down there or the, grocery shop there. But there is a concern on the part of the police that whilst the proprietor of the business might be checked, that if a working person's there, who knows, the kid could be going from a unsafe situation to a desperately unsafe situation. So that's the reason it's sort of, we were very uncomfortable getting involved, because we just couldn't see how to make it work.
Okay. Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Graham Kane?
Yes, I want to say to Geoff how grateful I am for the participation that the Neighbourhood Watch had in attending our church and putting the one-way screws back onto our parishioners without any expectation of reward, and many were happy to contribute to that. But really my question is, has the installation of security cameras made a significant effect in the number of home invasions or illegal activities arising in our community, please? Thanks, Geoff.
It's an interesting question that does come up quite often, and there's a debate raging as to whether the presence of the cameras is a bit of a deterrent, because of course one of the issues with cameras is they're very good after the event. So you can hand on the video, if you like, to the police to say, well, this is what the person who nicked all my stuff from my house looked like. But the jury, unfortunate expression perhaps, but the jury's out as to whether the cameras themselves act as a real deterrent or not. Certainly in Manningham, we've seen, or probably for the last 10 years, that except for occasional blips caused by things like COVID, that round about 40 burglaries average per month, and it just goes on and on and on. And over that time, there's been more cameras installed and so on. Now, you might say, we probably have to survey the people who own cameras and see whether they're actually victims or not. Yeah, so intuitively you'd think that having something up there on the wall would perhaps discourage somebody because they can be recognised. But of course the counter argument is, why did you put the cameras up? Because you've got something to protect. So therefore this is a house worth going to. I'm not advocating, by the way, therefore you leave your front door open, so you know, it makes it obvious that perhaps you don't have anything to protect. That's not going to work either. But yeah, so it's a sort of an interesting area of, and I do know that they even sell false cameras, you know, that have a little battery in them and the little red light comes on. And but I think the crooks are onto that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Geoff, we've actually got Wi-Fi connected cameras on the outside of the house in all our entrance locations, and I get an alert on my phone immediately someone rocks up. So it's not as though after the event I actually get it online, direct, you know, instantaneously. So if someone is delivering something to the front door, then they're on my camera, and I can actually talk to them through the camera I've got with the two-way communication.
Yeah, look, I think with some of the advances in technology, even the mere fact that you're talking to somebody who comes to the front door, to knock on the door to see if you're home, because if you're not home, they might go around the back and come in, to have a voice boom out from your bell or something to say, oh, hello, what can I do for you, sort of thing, is perhaps a bit daunting and may work. I guess if you really had the time and the resources, you might research a lot of this stuff. Just as a very quick aside, which links into a few of the things I've already said, it's interesting that there was quite a extensive research project recently completed by the University of Sydney, I think it was, but it was done for the Department of Justice in Victoria. And it seems that the people who are interviewed as part of the research, they seem to feel they get their most comfort and they feel the most authoritative advice from their neighbours, which is an interesting thing, because in some cases, you know, when we get involved in issues that occur, you'd think, I'm not sure that neighbour has really got it all right, and I don't know, them spreading their knowledge, in inverted commas, is actually an asset rather than a liability. But so once again, if you go back to the Knowing Your Neighbour program, which I talked about a bit earlier, it once again gets back to this thing that if we can get a sort of a cluster of people who are looking after each other, that's perhaps the best way we can protect ourselves, rather than sort of stand guard at the front door with a shotgun over our shoulder just in case somebody wants to cause mischief.
No shotguns over shoulders here.
Oh, okay. Good.
Felix.
Just unmuting there. Geoff, we've been living in Manningham for the last 16 years, and I just want to say that I'm a great admirer of the work that you and your volunteers do, you know, particularly on the ground for the community. There's a Facebook group out there called Crime Prevention Manningham, and they're not on the ground. They don't do anything other than talk to each other on Facebook, you know. But it's a fairly sizable group. Do you have any interaction with them or any association with them?
Well, in fact, at one stage, before we had a Facebook page ourselves, they decided to sort of start this new group. In fact, they were calling themselves Neighbourhood Watch Manningham, which was a bit of a worry because they hadn't even spoken to us. So, but we thought, this is a nice solution, because there's one thing I was not going to do was run a Facebook page. But then we got quite nervous about sort of some of the posts and what was going on. So, and the police also intervened and they changed their name. And, but a lot of their stuff is quite useful, and I'm sort of part of that thing, not as a official, but I, you know, look up their stuff from time to time just to see what's going on. But the whole thing with social media leaves me uneasy, which I'm probably now showing my age, because people can create some real problems. And you know, the thing that troubles me most is if you walk down some streets in some suburbs in Melbourne and you have a hoodie on, you know, you're going to be reported from house to house almost that you're a crook. You're obviously a crook if you're, you know, got a hoodie on, rather than just being cold or keeping the rain off your head. And that sort of stuff worries me. Whereas if people use social media as a method of collecting info and then report it to the police, that's great, because certainly a heck of a lot better than the old telephone tree that we used, you know, when we first started.
Mm. Other questions for Geoff? Anyone else, please? Andrew, I think has got his hand up.
No. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've got lots of questions, so I'll try and focus and maybe talk to you later. There's two aspects, a lot of aspects of what you've spoken about, and we really love the work that Crime Watchers do and really support it.
Neighbourhood Watch.
Sorry, Neighbourhood Watch. But the couple of things. One was the cameras. And it's really a comment, and I'll give you a question. When we did, we had some locals look at our place in relation to cameras, and they focused on post rather than prevention. So they thought that cameras that were sort of particularly visible and obvious were a waste of time. Because people just spray them and whatever, and they cover them up before they're going to invade a house anyway. So if you've got a really large focusing camera that's really obvious to the neighbourhood, they just spray it anyway. So they said put in cameras that they can't see, and then it's about sort of your own security and determining who's at your door. And then post, if there's an event, then you can track them down. So that's what we've done with the camera situation. But
your question, Andrew?
The question was really about iWatch. And can you tell us more about that and what that's about? You touched on it, but I noticed just on my Facebook account here that it seems to be fairly active. What's that actually about? Is it duplication, or is it something that adds to what Neighbourhood Watch does?
iWatch is actually a name adopted by the Victoria Police for their almost community Facebook pages. So there's 79 iWatch pages in Victoria, one for each municipality. And so you've got the Manningham Police iWatch page, and the benefit of that is that the police are trying to sort of talk to the public, and the way you apparently talk to people these days is via social media rather than, you know, face to face, and certainly it's a lot more efficient. So what they're doing, and that's why it is actually fairly active page, because if they want to get out a message that a person's missing, for example, or did you see this incident at Doncaster Shopping Town on September the 12th or something, they can get it out with the sort of benefits of social media. And then if somebody comes back with a question about this or that or the other, there's various police by rotation are charged with the task of looking after the iWatch page for a day, and so they're onto it fairly quickly, and they can respond with a, you know, if the member of the public's got a question when they may not be prepared to go in front the counter at the Doncaster Police Station to deal with it. So it's really, I suppose, just a label on the Victoria Police Facebook pages throughout the state.
Okay, thank you. I'd also appreciate, be very interested in volunteering. So if you could, in future we could be in contact about volunteering for Neighbourhood Watch. I'd be very interested.
Okay, well, I'll speak to Brian at some stage and get your email address or something, and we can fix that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. We'll arrange that. So, folks, thank you very much. And Geoff, thank you enormously for your address tonight. It's been great information, and for those, many of us knew a little about Neighbourhood Watch, but nothing like the background that you've given us tonight and where it's at now. And it's great to see those crime stats coming down in Manningham. As you said, maybe not all attributable to Neighbourhood Watch, but certainly a great help in that situation. And that connecting with neighbours is very much what our Connecting Manningham program, in fact, is about in different ways. But it's got a very similar themes in relation to getting to know your neighbours, getting to know your friends, keeping in communication, keeping in contact where we can look after each other. Very much part of the theme that you guys use, and certainly we use as well. So Geoff, we'd like to acknowledge your presentation tonight, and I'll just share my screen as well. And what we've done is to in your name to donate to the polio eradication project for Rotary 2021. We're almost there in terms of the eradication of polio worldwide. Very, very close in all of those third world countries, with a couple of minor exceptions. A great program, but we are strong supporters of that. And for our guest speakers, we're making a donation on their behalf to the eradication program for polio. So Geoff, thank you very, very much. I'll send this to you as an email. Thank you again for being our guest speaker tonight. Please thank Geoff, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Geoff, we've got some other business to get on with. Happy if you want to join, continue on with us. Otherwise, we do understand you got lots on from what you said before. If you'd like to disappear, that'd be fantastic. That'd be obviously okay as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'll say good night and get back to my Neighbourhood Watch work.
Okay. Thanks again, Geoff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So.